Where are you from, and how did you grow up?
So from Long Island. I was
Yep.
born in Seacliff, Long Island, which is a little Victorian kind of hippie town on the North Shore of Long Island. Born on the same street as my wife, Dayton Street.
Wow.
Yeah, and so for the first 3 years we were together on the same street. I'm a year older, so her mom used to babysit me when I used to eat Cheerios off the floor where she was pregnant with her, which was a pretty funny story. And then I moved to Roslyn Harbor, which was a mile away. And then we went to nursery school together, ended up in the North Shore school districts. My mom was the art teacher at Glenwood Landing School, and went to North Shore High School. We were, prom dates senior year, and then dated for a bit in college, and then reunited after college some years later. But Long Island ended up.
What set that
Yeah,
in like socioeconomic context? Is that like a really rich part of Long Island or middle class?
No, we were
what?
middle class, very much middle class. My dad worked in the city. He was in he worked for Levi and Christian Dior in sales, and my mom was an art teacher, as I said. So I actually went. She was my art teacher K through 6.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was
So
it was a
pretty
very
normal
very
American.
normal, very middle class. 3-sport athlete. Lacrosse, winter track, football. Very kind of, even though it's Long Island and close to the city, it's kind of very Americana.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Too.
Surprisingly.
So then you go to Yale for lacrosse.
I did. Well, I went to Yale for the academics, but we like to keep that. Yes, but lacrosse was a big part of me being admitted. Absolutely.
What did you think of it? Was it a different world from the one you were from?
Yale, yeah, absolutely. It's a long time ago to reflect back, but it was certainly there was a big culture shock, both academically and socially, immediately, like first weekend of school. So,
In what way?
just it was. I got to school, and there were, without naming names, I was at the first weekend of school I wasn't in New Haven, but out in the Cape with folks that the highways in New York were named after, and large condiments and tires and stuff like that.
Large condiments. Okay.
So it was definitely it was a big culture shock, but I adapted pretty quickly from a academic standpoint. The academic rigor was certainly from a public high school in Long Island relative to Taft or Exeter or Andover. There was a quick learning curve, but it was attainable. And then socially, I think I did a fine job as well too. So ended up at Yale. Went through 4 years. We had a successful lacrosse career there, which was an absolutely incredible experience, and kept you in line, kept you in shape.
Yeah.
Less distracted from everything. And graduated. I ended up a quick stint into your world. Ended up working on the Olympics for NBC for Bob Costas down at in '96 in Atlanta. And then went on to take a job at Citibank. So that's where I got my first Asia experience. I was fascinated with Vietnam and had studied some contemporary American history in college. My dad was a veteran. He was a Marine, served in combat on the Hai Van Pass.
In Vietnam.
In Vietnam. So he was in Vietnam when he was 23. I had gone on a trip around the world, and really just one of the stops was Vietnam. One of my.
Had he told you about it when you were growing up?
He did. We were a little bit irreverent and would tease him about it and get dressed up as fatigues and tell him we're knee deep in rice patties and
trying to elicit a flashback or something.
Trying to elicit PTSD maybe. Yeah, we were a little wild. me and my 3 brothers and sisters. So he didn't talk about it much, but we tried to bring it up a lot. It was kind of.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was.
So you wound up working for Citibank in Vietnam.
I wound up getting a job with Citibank in Vietnam. I kind of orchestrated it through an uncle that had a relationship at Citibank, and ended up getting a management associate job there. They just opened. Doi Moi was kind of underway, which was the not necessarily privatization, but the opening of Vietnam post the war, the conflict, the war of American aggression.
Yeah.
As they've been coached to say, as if you live in Vietnam for some time. So went there, was a management associate. Was in Hanoi for a year, and then a couple years in Ho Chi Minh City, and ended up at Citicorp Asia Capital Limited, where I was in private equity. So
wow,
that was the beginning.
Where'd you go after Vietnam?
After Vietnam, there was a nonprofit that had come through to produce a film about Vietnam, which involved a bike ride on mountain bikes from Hanoi to Ho Chi Minh City. It was
Long
an
way.
18-day ride, 1,200 miles. And we had a production team actually video it. Citibank, they asked me at Citibank to sponsor it. So I wrote like a letter to New York and said, can we sponsor this amazing event? We've got 100 NVA disabled soldiers, and we've got 100 American veterans, primarily disabled, and we got on bicycles and hand cycles. I piloted a blind veteran that had been shot near Khe Sanh, and spent 18 days on a bike going over those memories. And then, actually, this is how I left Citibank. I got a call. So this is an amazing experience, yada yada. I'm sitting at my desk at Citibank in Ho Chi Minh City, or I forget what office I was in. Got a call and said, we had such a great time with you riding on the bike. Would you come back and produce, be a co-executive producer on this film? And you could get a job. One of the benefactors of the charity was a Goldman guy. One was at Equitable Financial at the time. And they're both the CEOs or senior partners. And they're like, we'll give you a job. You have the training at Citi. Just produce the movie for us. And so I went back, and we ended up, selling. I worked very closely with a great colleague down in Charlotte. We sold the film to NBC, title sponsor. We sold it to Reebok as a title sponsor. Got Dick Enberg to do the intro. Got Bruce Springsteen to donate a song.
Wow.
Yeah, Shut Out the Light, and it was a great success. We won the Emmy in '99. So
Amazing.
Daytime Outstanding Program Achievement. So 1 for 1 television production. This is my
So you're an
second time.
Emmy Award winner.
I am, yeah.
Amazing. So what'd you do after that?
So after that, I ended up going. The one kind of principal at Equitable Financial had moved over to New England Financial. So he'd taken a new job as the chairman and CEO of New England Financial. I went into the special, strategic. It was a strategic management group, and did a little bit of. It was primarily almost like an in-house management consultant in finance, across the business. They put me on a lot of different special projects, and that was my job for the next couple of years. And then we were actually bought by MetLife. And so when New England Financial was bought by MetLife, I went down to New York very quickly in that acquisition. But my boss, who was the CEO and chairman, became the president of individual life at MetLife, a much bigger organization. So it wasn't as interesting an opportunity. So I went out and started a technology company with one of the consultants I'd worked with previously, one of the management consultants. I think it was at Arthur Andersen. And we started a tech company and sold that in 2004 to Coactive Marketing Group, which was a NASDAQ-listed company. And then from there, so that was kind of an exit while I was working very closely on the Carry for President campaign. So I was a volunteer. I was essentially raising capital, organized some different, surrogate tours and bus tours with some celebrities, stuff that's since backfired. But that campaign in 2004 it seemed to work. And basically was poised through kind of the success that I had in the fundraising, that I was going to go and take a job in the White House. So I thought I was, going to work in small business, or there was some other, there were all the larger kind of bundlers. I was a baby bundler. I think I was identified as in some in the New York Post at some point. But I ended up, looking at those jobs and looking at, what would you have to do in security clearance and all that. Long story short, it sold. Sataro was the name of the company that sold, and poised to do that. We thought we were going to win, and then what was it? November 3rd, 2004. I basically hung a shingle and said I need a job because we lost.
I remember that. Yeah. The part where you lost.
The part. So I was in Boston. I think I was crying. I was with my wife. I remember in the hotel, looking out at the acceptance stage, which there was a couple of people running, walking around the stage, and
drunk dazed
yeah, exactly,
people,
unexploded fireworks, and so that was an unsuccessful run. But I spent a lot of time and put a big effort into it, and it was a great experience. We thought we were doing a great thing, and unfortunately, it's hard to beat an incumbent.
So 2004 November, you're married, no job.
Yep, we're without a job, and I team up with a partner, and we start Rosemont. We start Rosemont Capital, and Rosemont Capital starts really as in the private equity world, which in something called a fundless sponsor. So when you're out and in private equity early, you go out as a fundless sponsor, and what that means is you don't have a pool of capital to kind of draw on, but you look for an asset. You identify an asset you think is going to be a good private asset that you can either take public or sell to another strategic buyer. So that's always kind of like the infancy of a private equity firm. And a lot of fundless sponsors succeed. A lot of fundless sponsors fall by the wayside, and a lot of managers at fundless sponsors just give up. But if you have some early successes, you can end up establishing a firm, and we ended up establishing a multi-asset class boutique firm that was was fairly successful. Most of our success was in real estate. We ended up buying a real estate management company, and that was called Rosemont Real. We renamed it Rosemont Realty. It was called BGK or some acronym, and we ended up putting the Rosemont brand on that after, I would say, 5 years in business at Rosemont Capital. And that business was sold later in 2015. But at our peak, we probably had $3 billion of assets under management, which is kind of like your scorecard as a private equity manager. We'd done some great things.
Was Hunter Biden an original partner at Rosemont?
No. Hunter Biden, I met really, or I had met him before, but had like substantive conversations at a lunch I met in 08, 09.
So you were already.
It was 5 years,
established
Absolutely.
with the business by then.
Yes, business was quite established. We had raised. We were in the Rosemont Seneca Partners came along. Really, at the time that we bought Rosemont Realty, so around 2010, I don't know the exact dates right now. It's a while ago, but Rosemont, we had an initial fundless sponsor deals, so 2 or 3, 4 deals that we did independently and worked those deals. Then we'd raised a fund, so we had a 2007 vintage fund, which is the year that you started. It's very clever. So we had a 2007 vintage co-investment fund, and then. We actually raised, out of the financial crisis, we raised the TALF debt fund, so reinvesting in asset-backed securities, and then we had some other sub funds in technology, but ultimately like kind of the big successful piece of Rosemont ended up being Rosemont Realty, which was this acquisition of BGK.
So it sounds like you've got a perfectly self-sustaining business, $3 billion under management. That's success, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it was.
So how does Hunter Biden get involved, and why?
So we had this lunch, and a mutual friend, or it wasn't even, I don't know how it was, but an attorney of Hunter's, another attorney, Hunter's an attorney as well, had introduced us, and we had a lunch, and we always, you're always looking for kind of an edge or an advantage as being a boutique, and certainly $3 billion was good, but as an AUM number, a scorecard, but in real estate, it's kind of a levered number, so
totally.
it's a little
exactly
exaggerated.
Right.
If you're Blackstone 4 and you have $3 billion, you have $3 billion of dry powder. If you have a small private equity fund with $3 billion under management, a lot of it's real estate. It's actually not the actual number you have in dry powder. So nuance, but
it's very liquid.
Yeah, exactly. It's very liquid, and you don't have the buying power. So you're always looking for an edge. You're always looking to expand. And we had obviously, we were demystified to Washington just through relationships. And Hunter was in a stage where he was transitioning from lobbying to strategic advisory.
What's the difference?
Well, as I understand it, when you can probably answer it better than me, given your background.
There's a distinction, but no difference that I can see.
Right, exactly. So
one you register for, the other you don't.
Right. And I think that there are some legal, limits around registering when your father's the vice president. So I think that was what they ran into. But there's certain, again, I'm not an expert on it. I know that was
I think in Washington, you can't lobby, but you can strategically advise.
Right. Exactly. There you go. Strategically advised. Right. It's a good nuance.
So what was the business that you imagined him helping you with?
The core business, what we really hoped for was raise introductions to capital, to raise more capital, right? And deal flow. So the things that make a private equity fund successful, whether it's in real estate or asset-backed securities, or just going out and looking for operating assets, it's finding unique deals. And then finding the capital to actually invest in those deals and make them worth more money. Right?
Exactly.
But
you got to have the dough.
Right. You got to have the dough. So I think in the back of our minds, the the initial strategy was, okay, we can expand our network exponentially. Hunter and his strategic team know, tons of folks, and it's a whole new world of, of high net worth individuals, family offices, institutional pension funds, which was a huge one that we thought that we could crack that never materialized. And yes, and so that was the genesis. But on paper, what we looked at was like, okay, why are you kind of teaming up this? And there was no investment in it. It was Rosemont Seneca Partners was kind of a dovetail concept. It's not like we didn't fund it, nor did they fund it. We just said they had their strategic advisory business, we had our private equity business. Let's combine forces, expand our network, and maybe get some help. Or maybe when we talk to a strategic asset that's selling we had a company that sold body armor, for instance. Maybe we could get a military contract because someone in DC knew the Pentagon people. I mean, it's just simple kind of connecting the dots.
It is, but if I can just, and this is not a criticism of you because I lived there, I didn't see this either. But if you're looking for money, Washington logically would be the last place you would go.
Right.
I mean, you go to New York or maybe Los Angeles or maybe Dubai or Milan or places where people do business. Washington's not about business, it's about governance.
Right.
It's kind of weird, isn't it? And maybe a sign of deeper corruption that Washington is like the place you go to raise money.
Yeah, I think, where we were in this, in kind of the, in the world of private equity. We're a very small private equity fund at the end of the day. So the network that you're going to is more family office, high net worth individuals, and then maybe you get a breakthrough with a pension fund. So I think the fundraising elements of linking up with Seneca Partners was really that, but we took advantage of all the kind of strategic advisory work and the network that they had to promote to the assets, to promote to the other, to people that we're raising money from. Say, oh, listen, we have a DC office. We know how to operate. This is going to give us
can I
advantage.
just ask, this is not related to you.
Yeah.
You were not able to get pension money, right?
No.
But do you believe, having operated in this world, pension funds are some of the biggest investors in the world?
Absolutely. They are the institutional investors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you think that political leverage allows people to get investments from pension funds? I mean, clearly it does.
In the world?
In the world,
yes. Absolutely. Unfortunately, we were not able. But
you weren't able to. But like the idea that a pension fund would make an investment decision based on political calculations is like the definition of corruption, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that I think there's an entire world and business that's been focused on trying to create those lines of demarcation. I mean, it's one of the biggest. I mean, all the pension managers. I mean, it's a whole world to. It's a bigger discussion, but yes, obviously that would be the ultimate form of corruption.
So just to sum up what I think we're hearing so far is that you're on a pretty conventional business track.
Correct.
You're working for a big bank at first, and then you decide to move into this burgeoning private equity world, which really was exploding at the time. And then at some point, having gotten the business off the ground and it's succeeding, you look to Washington for opportunities there.
Right.
And you run into Hunter Biden or are set up with Hunter Biden.
Right. I'm set up with Hunter Biden. And again, at that time, it seemed like, it was, hindsight's 2020, but it seemed like an opportunity to just broaden our network, broaden our, competitive advantage on the deal side by having this, access or regulatory understanding of DC is how we properly say it. And maybe expanding our, and getting lucky with a pension fund introduction.
Yes.
Or another, large family, maybe there's a political donor that's a $1 billion family office on the West Coast that Hunter has a relationship with. So I thought that was enough reason to kind of not invest in a new company, but just, flirt with a joint venture at the end of the day.
So, and you're in your early 30s at this point.
Yeah,
you're trying to
early
make your
30s.
way. You wind up, though, with this deal most famously with Burisma.
Burisma, yeah.
Yes. How did that come about?
So the Burisma deal came about initially, the CEO, Zolszewski, and Vadim, I'm going to abuse the name.
I have it here. I've got it right here.
Why don't you say it first, and then it'll...
I can't, I got to put my glasses on. Yeah.
Yeah, so Vadim and Nikolai come through. They're working with they're in the network. Again, you're always expanding your network in raising capital and private equity, and work with this group, Tri Global Group, which Famously also worked with Mayor Giuliani, which
Yes.
was another one of their clients, which we found out later, but it was kind of interesting. They had on their fundraising list had Nikolai and Vadim, who were the CEO and the CEO, owner, and corporate secretary of Burisma, and they'd come through New York.
Pozharsky.
Yeah, there we go. We'll just use Vadim, I think. It's
Vadim.
So they come through New York. I was actually on a business trip in Asia. And they're taken through, and the Tri Global Group says we're working on these things. One of the funds that we're marketing is Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund 1, REEF, and they show it to them, and that's probably I'll probably get the dates wrong, but that's maybe in the early the 2012 range. Okay, so that's the first context. So we've got a placement agent working on Rosemont Real. They're on commission business with Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund. They meet Vadim and Burisma. I don't know if they had known each other before, but there's this a mini Gark, as we call him, and a mini Gark and Vadim, who's the corporate secretary. They come through. They pitch. They give him the deck. I don't know if they spent any time on it. The deck being the marketing presentation for REEF. And nothing happens. They don't come in as an investor, but Tri Global was successful in identifying some investors for us, not Burisma. Cut to 2014, and I'm in the midst of a trip to Europe, and we're doing a strategic deal with a large bank there. And I get there, late February, early March, and it happens to be the day that Putin invaded Crimea, a peaceful invasion of Crimea, as they say. And so our deal falls through because there's all these basically it's like this huge paradigm shift, obviously, after Maidan.
Yes.
And, everything changed in Europe, and it became this, there's this new inflection point of Ukraine, and that really started there on those days. So needless to say, our strategic deal with the bank falls through for Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund. So we're quickly pivoting because at the same time we're raising for Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund 2. So I happened to be at a meeting, and Tri Global says, well, are you still trying to raise capital? So would you like to meet with Nikolai Zolshevsky to pitch your wares? I bring the deck to him. We go through the presentation, and he says, interestingly enough, he knows, obviously he's calculating. He had made some moves earlier, which I'll tell you about, thinking about Ukraine and the former position that he had. So we pitched him the deck. He kind of looks through it, and, I remembered he had some like crazy watch with like it was like a Ulysses Nardone with like an oil thing that was ticking. Like the second hand was like one of those oil wells, like cranking like this. Little I know it was a natural gas rig, but so it was hard to decipher. But anyway, it was quite an impression. He again, for the second time, kind of ignored the real estate pitch, and mentioned in the meeting, he didn't agree. I mean, he was very polite, but he was obviously not interested in that. Mentioned, he said, President Kwasniewski of Poland has joined my board a couple months ago, and do you mind if he gives you a call? That was kind of like our departure. And I said, yeah, wonderful. Please follow up and write $100 million check into Rosemont Real Estate Acquisition Fund 2. So we never had another discussion about that. And the next day, maybe 48 hours later, Kwasniewski and Vadim, who's the corporate secretary, who was not at the first meeting, but he was in New York, a couple years back. Kwasniewski calls me, says, you want to come to Warsaw? I want to, tell you about Burisma. And I kind of had a hint, but I didn't have a pure picture.
It was the president of Poland.
It was the president of Poland, yeah. Yeah, so it was.
So you happen to be over there trying to raise money for a real estate fund.
Exactly. I was there for a big strategic closing that got completely
blown up by world events.
Exactly, by world events.
So you're over there to raise money for your real estate fund.
Correct.
From the guy from Burisma, because he's just a rich guy looking to diversify. They make a ton of money selling natural gas, and they want to invest it.
Right.
He's not interested in your pitch, and he says, by the way, since you're here, I'd like you to talk to the president of Poland.
Yes.
Who then calls you.
Yes. It was coordinated by Vadim, but yes, eventually we somehow got connected on WhatsApp, and yes, calls me, invites me to Poland. I was on a a lot flight from, or whatever the airline's called, I think it's LOT, from JFK within a couple days. And I flew directly to Warsaw for 36 hours, sat down with Kwasniewski, and he said, listen, we've got a great opportunity, energy independence for Ukraine, this company Burisma, I joined the board. There's a, we've looked at your profile, I know, you've got Rosemont, you can raise, and the idea was to raise outside capital for Burisma. So they were like, come join the board. It's a very high paying opportunity. Wasn't, we didn't talk details on that in that particular meeting, but he's like, trust me, and there's a chance to build an equity position in this business, and this could be, the next Exxon of Ukraine or whatever. I think there's some discovery emails that talk about that. Yeah. So
well, why wouldn't it have been? I mean, it was a real company.
Exactly, real company, incredible management team, new age equipment.
But why you?
Why me? Because I was a bereaver.
You're a true bereaver, huh?
I was no. Why me?
No, it's just interesting because you're raising money for a real estate fund. But then the guy from the natural gas company says, talk to the president of Poland about joining the board of our natural gas company.
Right.
Was Hunter Biden mentioned at all?
Hunter Biden was not mentioned, though. I mean, I can't deny that they did some research about Rosemont Seneca Partners, but
because it just seems like
it was not mentioned. It was not mentioned to me.
It's a little. I mean, you sound like a very capable business operator, but not someone who specializes in the energy sector.
No, I've had a diverse portfolio.
Right. Well, now you know a lot about energy.
Now I do.
Yeah, but then.
Right. Agreed. I had one energy investment that we had made in Texas, but that's true. I was certainly not by any stretch of the imagination an expert in excavating natural gas.
Right. But the president of Poland is asking you to join the board. I mean, by the way, lots of weird things happen in life, but I just kind of suspect that maybe this was all about getting Hunter Biden involved.
I think that they saw an opportunity to raise capital. I think that they thought that I was close enough to political powers that I don't think that was their initial intention, to be completely honest. I don't think they were like, I was a mark that they identified and then found Hunter. I think it was a little bit more natural than that. And at the end of the day, similar to kind of what happened in my fate, that, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. So how did he get involved? It
was as you go on with the progression of the story. So he's obviously a partner, and we're always looking to incent each other and include each other in each of our opportunities. And what happened was I came back, I joined the board, or I started the process of joining the board. I did join the board. I think I was on the board in March of that year of 2014 was probably my first month there. And then I came back and Hunter was of counsel. And so what I did is I brought him on board as counsel to legally represent the company and help them and basically have a firm in DC that would look out for their best interests, or kind of their any kind of geopolitical.
I'm sorry. I'm calling bullshit on just this one thing, okay? So this is a city filled with law firms.
Yes.
Where every...
Yeah, but Hunter was my partner.
I know. I'm just saying, this is a city where the number one job for a college-educated Caucasian man is lawyer at a firm.
Right, exactly.
Right. And a lot of those firms deal with foreign transactions and business and whatever. Hunter Biden doesn't have actually a meaningful history as a practicing attorney. I mean,
he's been in the kind of lobbying world.
So, I mean, that's an influence play, right? There.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think the firm that he's of counsel was prominent and had a large business in lobbying. So I think, it made sense, and it was also incenting a business partner of ours, and it was a business partner of mine. I think it was, it made all the logic in the world, and I think if it stayed like that, it would have been, a little
history would have been very different.
History would have been.
So how did he wind up on the board of Burisma?
So what happened was we quickly developed. There was a team from Burisma that came into DC, did some meetings. There was a kind of a lead practitioner on the law side that was brought in to be like the Hunter was a relationship manager, and then there was like a lead for what things that needed to be done. We need to lobby
Is
for this or
relationship manager, is that like a business card title?
It's generally like of counsel at these law firms. It's to make introductions.
Yeah, of course. I just love that
want
phrase.
One of those. I should have gone to law school.
I aspire to be that.
No, it's
So
good
great.
gig if you can get it. Yeah.
Hey guys, Chris here from Amazine Outdoors. Be sure to subscribe, like, share, comment, and turn on notifications for Amazine Outdoors if you want to see more videos like this. Amazine Outdoors is a skull hanging company based out of Michigan. We use locally sourced steel to CNC plasma cut and fabricate all of our products. Our motto is simple, effective, and affordable. There are no fancy names or over-engineered designs. The hangers are built around the skull itself to allow you to securely hang your skull anywhere you please. They are priced with hunters in mind so you don't have to spend big money to hang your big bucks. AmazineOutdoors.com